I just want to invest in people that really want to be the best that they can be. Hello world, this is Todd Scrima. I've got Jim Reed here, who's my best friend and partner in crime in a business. And this is the beginning of Be Your Best podcast, which some of you guys will be viewing this on video, some of you just auditory. But any tools that I go over, you'll be able to go to a website and get any of these tools. I'm going to start, since this is my first one, with a quick overview of who I am. And then I'll introduce Jim. And our subject today is business planning. So when you look at going into next year, we're going to cover from business people who've been in business a long time, how we do business planning, because I think it's a very, very underrated and underutilized skill. So my name's Todd Scrima. I live in Sacramento, California. Jim Reed also lives in Sacramento. I started in business when I was 17, working for my father. And I ended up going to college and graduating and getting into the mortgage business. And then 2.5 years later, after working for a company, I thought I knew everything. And I started a company called Summit Funding, which is now one of the largest mortgage banking companies in the country. 25 years later, 20 years ago, I started a business coaching company called The Core Training, which coaches 500 business people across the country. And so I've been doing that for 20 years. And I'm a big fan of podcasts. I love people like a Jay Shetty or Ed Milet, Tony Robbins. I mean, I just love them. And I thought, Summit alone has a few 100,000 past clients. We have millions of people literally in our business that are past clients. They're realtors that send us business, home builders, financial planners. And I said, what can we do to give back? And I think that a few reasons why I started this is because I want to help people grow and I want to help them learn. I also think that I'll be able to provide some uncommon knowledge to common people that really just want to do better. Some people listen to this and they might already own a big business, or they might be where they're at in their business where they want to be, but you'll be able to pick up some 2 or 3 things that you may add to your business planning. There's other people who listen to this that want to start a business and they have no clue where to start. So this will give them a start. There's the accountant that has been in business 5 years and is growing his practice. This will give him or her some ideas. So I'm very excited about this. What I'm doing is taking some great business people that I know, adding things that I have done in my business and things that I've coached people on, and then having some guests on here. I'm doing one a month specific to business people. So that could be a salesperson is a business person. Any business person really falls into this category. And I'm doing one a month that is more general in nature, that really anyone could listen to and get something out of. So with that said, let me introduce Jim. So I'll tell a quick story. So I met, how I remember it is I was standing in class at Sac State. Now remember, my high school was a 150 person graduating class. I all of a sudden was at Sac State with 28,000 students. So I don't know a single soul. I know nobody. So I figure I got to make some friends. So I'm standing in line waiting to pay something or add a class. And I strike up a conversation with Jim. And I thought he was like this cool surfer dude. And I just liked him immediately from the start. And then we started, I saw him a week or so later at a grocery store that we both started working at. And as he tells the story, he had been in the grocery business, so he was the checker and I was the bagger. And that's a true story. So long story short, we become roommates. We were roommates for a long time. We both end up getting married and having kids and doing all this stuff. But way back then, I came home one day and I was like, Jimmy was like, hey, he's getting ready to go to the grocery store. I'm getting home at 8 o'clock at night. And he's like, dude, why are you working so hard? What are you doing getting home at 8 o'clock at night? I said, I just need some help. I said, I'm in this mortgage gig and I love it, but I'm like inundated with work and I just can't get it all done. And he looks at me and says, well, you could hire me, but you couldn't afford me. And I said, well, how much you make an hour? And he's like, $14 an hour. And I said, I'll pay you 18 or 16 or something like that. And he looked at me and he's all, you would? I said, yeah, I would. I really need some help. And I think you would be great at it. And so long story short, we started working together. That was over 20 years ago. He's been a huge part of the growth of Summit Funding, and he runs one of the largest branches in the country. He still personally does loans, so he personally oversees several locations and does mortgage loans. And he's been a professional coach for 18 years or so. So he's really smart, really fun. He's a, I always like to give people credibility, because sometimes I listen to podcasts and I'm like, does this person really know what they're talking about? Jimmy's one of these people where he's made a 7-figure income for over 10 years. So he's not kind of good. He's really, really, really good. A lot of years he's in multiple millions. I mean, he is a Mac Daddy earner. He saves a lot of money. He has a high net worth. And what he's known for in the coaching company is being very articulate, but yet holding people really accountable. So yes, he's my best friend, but I thought it was a good way for us to start this off. So Jimmy, welcome. Thanks for your time, bud. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I'm super honored. I listened to that story and I'm laughing because I think about how far we both come, and it was funny to rebound and listen to that for a minute. So thanks for having me. I'm excited. I can't wait to share some stuff.
Well, Jimmy, I think one of the things that I want to share with people is, I was a bagger at a grocery store. You grew up in Gilroy, California. We weren't anointed by God to do well in business. I was a dumb farm boy growing up on a farm. What I did is I've had some very good mentors, and I just read books and I studied and I learned, and you did the same thing. And most successful people out there, that's what they did, right? I mean, there are maybe 10% of people that inherited wealth or something, but we're one of those 90%ers that we just built up a business, we grew our skills, and that's really the whole point of this. Specifically, when I talk about business planning, I'm going to go over a visual that I'm going to share on screen, and then I'm going to come back to Jim and spend the rest of the time just interviewing him about business planning. So for those of you that are driving, you can go to beyourbestseries.com and you can get this visual I'm going to go over. It's a very simple 2-page business plan. And I will share that, and then you guys can download it later. So I was taught this. So this is a combination of several people that have poured into me about business planning. And I'm going to go over the basics of it and explain each section. And then I will ask probably Jim, and Jim, feel free to butt in on any of these things. When I talk about the first section at the top is very strategic. So the first section is very big picture. And the first question it asks is, why do we exist? What is the mission of the business? And I will give you an example, and then Jim, I'll ask you to butt in. I know, I have several companies, but I'll just talk about my mortgage company. When I sat down to do this years ago, here's what I wrote, and it's still the same today. It says, to inspire growth-minded people on a journey to create a meaningful career by achieving their personal best. Now, I could have shortened that and just said, grow people. So that's a simple, because for me, I just always wanted to grow people. Like, that's what fires me up. So my first point here is, when you're doing a business that you're passionate about, why are you passionate about it? And that's what you put here. Jimmy, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that one of the things that is super important about your goal and your thematic goal is that if I'm going to be part of your organization, which I am, it makes me believe and feel like I'm part of it, and that by being around you, I'm going to have my best opportunity to grow. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that your ability to influence people with this business plan to be on the same page is humongous. And that part of it right there starts it off in the right direction. That's what I think. I think, these whole business plans are really about how do we get a large number of people to move in the same direction.
Yes. In the book, Good to Great, he says, business is about 99% alignment. And that's what Jim is saying. So I'll give you an example for me. What I spent many years, probably first 10 years of my career, I would try and hire people and impose my values on them. And I'm sure I'm the only one that's ever done that, but I used to, have some young loan officer would be in front of me and he'd be saying, well, I want to make, $300,000 a year. I want to do this, and I would believe them. But yet, when I looked at their past, they spent 10 years not making more money each year, so they weren't growth minded. And so, for me to have a statement like this, it really tells me who I want to hire. And so, if they're not an inspired, growth minded person, and if I can't feel that through the hiring process, I shouldn't hire them, because I'm going to spend a lot of time and energy focusing on the wrong client that doesn't really want what I want. So my point there is, be passionate about it and use it to, like, what is it that drives you? For me, I like growing people. The second thing says here, how do we behave? And it says some core values. Mine are pretty simple. I put teamwork, accountability, and integrity. So when I go to make decisions, I think of this like a filter, and I'm like, okay, am I really living my core values? Am I doing this in integrity? Am I holding people accountable? Am I holding myself accountable? Do we have teamwork? Is culture important to me? So I put 3 words down there. I would encourage you not to put more than 3, because then you can't remember them. I see some of these companies have 10 core values, and I just can't remember them. And I don't think the employees can either. So Jimmy, what's your thoughts on core values?
Yeah, I think it's core values are the tool that I use for hiring and for making decisions. And so that's the big benefit to me, and I think the organization is, when it comes to running an organization, you're in day-to-day operations, and there's emotional issues that pop up and long-term relationship issues that are involved. And when it comes to decision making, there has to be a tool that you can use that makes it easier to make a decision. And when I look at our core values at our branch and our part of the organization, if someone's not fitting in there, it always ends up that it doesn't work out. And so it helps me to make quicker, better decisions that keep everybody, like you said, in alignment, because that's the secret to getting further down the road. It's a big deal.
And I will tell you that hiring people that emulate those core values is important, and then constantly talking about them all the time. And more than anything else, it's I call it mirrored leadership. So you can't be smoking a cigarette and then tell your kids not to smoke. So you should live these values. This should already describe who you are, because most of the people that will be listening to this are smaller companies. Summit is a mid-sized company with over 1,000 employees. So people look at me. Do I emulate those values? If I ever do something that doesn't do that, they can tell, and they may not point to it and say, "Hey, my leader's not following that core value," but they sense it. People are very intuitive, and so that also plays into all this. So I would pick those carefully. As far as what do we do, what is that vision? You could put a lot of things down here. Mine for the mortgage company says radical leadership in developing our people. So we coach all of our employees. They're on development plans, all kinds of things that pour through the organization. Because remember, my goal is to grow people and grow their business life and their personal life. So it has to do with leadership. It has to do with development. But I don't want you to copy me. This is for your business. Jim, when you think of a smaller business owner, what might be a vision for, I don't know, a realtor or an accountant?
Good question. So it's, it can be more like one of your just to talk about Todd for a second. One of your gifts, I think it's in your DNA, is you have a propensity. You get attracted to growing people, to leadership, and to what your biggest strength is, at least that I've always gotten from you, is your ability to create a vision and share a vision. And it's pretty big thinking, honestly. And when I look at a smaller organization, even like mine, which is kind of an organization within the company, it's like you're talking about, a smaller business. And when I look at what we do, our group, what we do is originate and process mortgage loans. That's what we do. And it needs to be clear and simple to the people, because it can get complicated and we can get distracted. And in the business plan and the vision, it needs to be clear. We originate and we process mortgage loans. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. Whenever I'm talking to somebody, I'll be like, hey, listen, there's 3 jobs in the mortgage business. Talking to someone that works for me, and we're working on them and their growth. I'm like, so here's what they are. You can own a mortgage company, You can originate mortgage loans, which means generate leads, or you can process a mortgage loan. And every job you know about is one of those three. So that's what we can do. And it helps people to be more, oh yeah, here's where we are, here's where we're going, and choosing their path. It only chooses our path as a group, but it helps the people that work for us choose their path.
Love that. It's so true. The last part of this that's very strategic, it says how we succeed. So what is the strategy? Again, this is one of those things where I know when I first started working on this, I spent years not I would put things down, you know, and I always did business planning in groups. I would always have people that actually did the work there. I actually, not just executives, you know, or not just people like that. Obviously in a smaller company, sometimes companies might be 3 people. Do this together, right? I mean, I think that's important, and you'll come up with these answers. Mine says relationship-driven operational excellence. So I want to be a relationship-driven company that executes the heck out of things. And that's pretty simple, and people can wrap their minds around that. But it can be so many different things on how you can succeed. This next section is, it says, what is your thematic goal? And this is the number one thing that the business needs to be focused on over the next 3 to 9 months. In other words, what's the biggest thing that needs attention? And I want to spend a little time on this because this oftentimes, like I was coaching someone the other day, and she said, well, I want to work on this process in my business. And her business wasn't doing well. And I said, no, we need to work on sales. So if you're every business lives and dies by sales. And if there's no sales, the business goes out of business. Jimmy, I got a question for you. First of all, maybe talk about how you see thematic goal and how that's changed for you from time to time. And then also I want you to touch on sales, because you and I teach a lot of sales, and it's always a disconnect on how lack of aggressive people are around sales in general.
Okay, great. So thematic goal is, it like you said, it changes. And so give you some different examples of what thematic goals have been for us. You know, a clear one for us that was not sales, and then I'll talk about sales if that's cool, is, you know, salespeople are fragile creatures. And anybody in a position of sales is somewhat fragile. In other words, they're, you know, as an organization and as a leader, one of my jobs is to give them confidence, to give them a process they can believe in. And so sometimes that thematic goal goes around that. For example, one time we had, hey, we're a mortgage company, we do loans, we want to close loans on time and smooth. I got to apply this to my business a little bit, but we can apply it to other businesses. And if my salespeople don't feel like we're achieving that, their behavior is not supporting it. They'll choose behavior that doesn't support going out and getting business. So for a while, our thematic goal was simple: submit our loans to underwriting on the 5th business day. 80% of our loans submitted to underwriting on the 5th business day. We hung it up on banners in 3 different areas in the office. We covered it every week in the pipeline meeting that we do, and every month in the branch meeting. And we measured it, and everybody knew that's what we were working on. And by doing that, it really got me to my other goal that was kind of undercover, which was confidence in the sales force, so that I could impose, hey, some sales activities that they would buy into. So those things are related, and sometimes that thematic goal is to get to another position, right? And then other ideas around, and to talk about sales, because it leads into that. Listen, here's what we were talking before the call, and like, hey, what's some reasons why companies or businesses, small or large, don't focus on sales enough? So I was thinking about it, and I think really 2 things. I think number 1 is they may not understand the sales process, right? They may not understand the sales process, and it's a process, and I didn't understand it for a long time. I just felt like, hey, I could be charming when I needed to, and that was my sales plan. And really understanding the sales process helps me to then do the second part, which is to implement some strategies or tactics. But I got to understand the sales process first. For me, the sales process is initial contact, build rapport, define benefits and close, and then have a follow-up plan. So if we say that out loud and we write it out loud, we can come up with tactics around it. And then we can focus it on our business planning session. Like if we don't have that understanding when we go into a business plan, how are we going to create tactics to sell those 4 steps to the sale? So I think understanding that process is the beginning of that.
You know, Jimmy and I have had the pleasure of coaching a lot of people, and salespeople typically think of themselves, and I say salespeople, which is most business owners, right? Sales is about influence. So when I pose this question, we say, okay, what are you best at? And people always pick step 2, which is rapport. And initial contact, which would be, say, initial contact plan would be, I'm going to make 10 calls out a day. 5 people I know, 5 people I don't know. That's a sales plan. That's an initial contact plan. Okay. And if you did that every day of your life, you would be super, super successful. I don't care what business you're in. Okay. The problem is people will do it one day, maybe 2 days. And then by the 3rd day, they're doing half. And by the 4th day, they're doing 1. And by the 5th day, they're doing none. And there's all kinds of reasons why that happens. But the main issue is that people lack so much self-confidence. And I found this in people my whole life. You know, not to get too far off topic, but I have a focus for every area of my life. So I have 3 children. I have Isabella, who's a 10-year-old crazy girl. I've got Travis, who's a 14-year-old boy, and a 16-year-old boy, Zach. And as I go through this, what I put down on my vision, I have this little dream room where I do my journaling every morning and prayers, and I write down my focus for my kids is to raise them with gratitude, because I find that that's a problem with people. And 2 is self-confidence. And I focus on those 2 things. If you were to ask me 2 things that I have found for myself personally and for other people that they should focus on developing skills around, it's gratitude, which leads to a joyful life, and self-confidence. Self-confidence being like Jimmy, when you're in that grocery store, and certainly none of us could have foreshadowed everything that we've done in business, but did you think you would be here today? That was 20, I don't know what, 25 years ago or so, or 27 years ago we were doing that, 28 years ago. Could you have foreshadowed what you're doing today?
I mean, to answer your question specifically, no, but generally, yes.
Explain that.
Well, specifically, when I said I was in the real estate game, I would have said I never would have been anywhere near lending or real estate. And there's some reasons around that. Like, dude, my grandpa went bankrupt twice in real estate. So it's like, I was going to avoid it like the plague. But, you know, I've a couple quick stories I want to tell. But so I would have never known exactly what I was going to do. But I do remember my dad coming to me one day, and everybody's got these memories of somebody, you know, some before and after moment of you actually heard what someone was saying. You know, a lot of times you're listening, but you don't hear them.
Yeah, I call it a magic moment when you actually, like, it's a before and after moment.
He's literally told me a lot of things to do, and I probably didn't hear many of them, but I do remember this specifically. He said, Jimmy, you're at a crossroads in your life. I didn't feel like I was at a crossroads. I was having fun. I was young. Crossroads? What are you talking about, crossroads? You're at a crossroads in your life. And he says, you're either going to keep hanging out with the people you hang out with, or you're going to start choosing your friends better. And that's all he said. And I'm all looking at him like, oh, he doesn't like my friends, getting defensive. I'm a defender by nature, so I'm already getting defensive. And he goes, I really hope it works out for you. And he left. And I was like, uh-oh, I just got kicked out the nest. So, but to say that at that moment, Todd, I started hanging out with people who had bigger, longer term plans. And so to say, hey, did you know that you would be successful? Once I started doing that, yes, I did know I would be successul.
And why did you know that? Just because you're picking better people to
you get confidence from the people you hang out with.
Yeah.
People who like, if they build you up, they like the people you hang out with determine who you become. It's what you think about. It's how you think. It's how you feel. And so if you're hanging out with people who are going places and want to get things done and talk about it a lot, it's going to change what I think about and talk about. And even what I believe, eventually, those 2 things, thinking about it and talking about it, are going to change what I believe. And once I change what I believe, now I can do all those actions.
Yeah, that's so good. Oh, that's so good. So it's kind of like, I have a similar story about some high school friends that I had to divorce because they started doing some crazy stuff. And I kind of was asking myself, well, either I'm going to follow that path or I'm going to go a different route. And and I think a lot of us have had those. But going back to what you said, it's like people. We hire a lot of people new into the business and we train them from scratch. And I love that program and I love developing those people. But one of the things I tell them is about 80% of your success is who you're hanging around and who you're coached and mentored by. I truly have found that my entire life. I see people that they'll say things like, "Gosh, if I wouldn't have met you or Jim or someone like you, I just wouldn't be the person I am today." And I've had so many of those people in my life that I'm like one of these people. I just met this guy at our golf course, and I don't even know him that well. And I invited him out to play golf, and then I spent the day with him just a couple weekends ago, and we're playing golf, and I'm like, this guy's like, he's good people. He's really good at what he does. He's a great family man. Like I just goodness reverberates out of this man. And when I find someone like that, I want to latch onto him and say, hey, can you help me? Every morning I listen to a podcast when I'm working out. So this morning I'm listening to John Maxwell. Now I've never met the man, but I've read his books and listened to his podcasts, and I'm hanging around him. I'm hanging around John Maxwell this morning for about 40 minutes. And there's it's not as good as being in person, obviously, but that's a good thing. There's no way, I don't think anyone on earth would say, hey, hanging around John Maxwell for 40 minutes is a bad thing. Because he's a good Christian man. He's one of the thought leaders around leadership. It's like, I just get nuggets from him. He's so good. So let me go back to this business plan. So here's what we've covered so far. We've talked about the big picture stuff like vision and core values and strategy. The main thing that the business needs to focus on right now. Now, there's a section in here called 1 year goals, and it says, go to last year. And it says, hey, how much was my taxable income last year? Okay. So look at it. What was your taxable income this last year? Write it down. What was my gross business income? Okay. Jimmy runs a business that does $40 million this year in revenue. $40 million. Okay. That's a big business. Okay. There's very few businesses that do that kind of revenue. So he would put his revenue number down. What was the net income from the business? Okay. What were my monthly expenses? And this is just a line item. It's like, hey, your average expenses may be $5,000 a month. It may be 50 grand a month. It may be 5 million a month. Okay. What's my break even? You know, how many sales or units do I need to do in order for the business to break even and not make a dime? The next one says, how many employees do I have? You know, on average this year, how many employees did I have? Was it 0? Was it 5? Was it 20? You know, was it 20,000? How much did I personally save this year? You know, one of the things that I believe strongly in is don't be one of these people that make a lot of money and then spend it all. That's dumb. You know, I can't think of a dumber thing to do than to make a lot of money and then spend every dime, which Jim and I in the coaching business have found that a lot, where people, they don't have skills around how to save. They were told, or they thought through their lives, that once they get to this income and they start making 200,000, 400,000 a year, to buy the big old house and buy this fancy sports car and all this stuff that really doesn't add to our lives. So I'm okay with spending money, but on things that you're really passionate about, but always save 20% of your deposits or 30% of your deposits, and you're going to be a multimillionaire. Okay. Weekly work hours. You know, how many hours a week are you working? I'll tell a story about this because I think it's important, and I want Jim to tell a story. I remember I'm about 27 years old. I'm about 5 years or so into the mortgage business. I had started Summit about 2.5 years prior. And I've always been an early riser. I get to the office, and it's about 7 a.m., 7:30, and my door is sitting right in front of me. And I don't want to go in. I'm exhausted. I am overwhelmed. I'm just physically, mentally exhausted. And of course, I ended up going to work, and but I remember thinking something's wrong. Like, I shouldn't be 27 years old. I'm already making a lot of money. I'm doing things I never thought I would do, and I'm approaching burnout 4 or 5 years in. That's a horrible place to be. And a lot of us have been there, and it's okay to be there, but it's also okay to change it. So to me, I don't think it's impressive at all to make a lot of money and run a business and work 70 hours a week. Now, most men, I'll just touch on this, and I want Jim to tell his thoughts on this. Most men tell ourselves we're doing it for our families.
Yeah.
BS. You're
Right.
doing it for you to fulfill your ego. Your kids and your spouse does not want you to work 70 hours a week. And so that's hard to swallow. It was hard for me to admit that. I was doing all those things to fill up my big old ego. And once I realized that, and I started then I could get tactical. Let me hire a coach that can help me with these things, work out some processes, hire more people, develop job descriptions, checklists, and the world, that's like the seas parted. But I had to reach rock bottom. Jimmy,
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, it's funny you say that, because the way I think about that, and I can remember I remember being having a mentor, and I was in a class with him, and he called it what I was struggling with. He called a false belief system. He called it BS, false belief system. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, you believe that for you to be successful and to earn the money you want to make, that you have to work a lot of hours, and that if you want to, like, my goal is to take care of as many families as I can at a high level. That's what I have written down for my personal vision. By as many families as I can, I mean the people who directly report to me. People have different visions and different stuff. That's kind of mine. And so to take on more people and to grow and do more business felt like had to be more work. And I was already working a lot. So it was a roadblock mentally. It was just a roadblock. So really, when I get into burnout, when I start to feel like anything I want to do to grow is going to be more work, which is more time away from my family, I have to change the way I think. And the way I have to change that is I need to learn those new skills. I just replace it with I need to learn new skills. I need to learn new skills. I need to learn new skills. I need to learn how to train people better, manage people better, hire people better. I need to learn how to delegate better. I need to learn how to say no more often. I just need to learn new skills. I can do it. You can do whatever it is. You can work 20 hours a week. You can do it if you're willing to learn the new skills. And that helps me move past those burnouts, right? Just a big, big thing for me that without it, honestly, I would have never grown, because I still get stuck, Todd. Last year, I got stuck with feeling like if I want to do more personal production, I do 3 jobs. I'm a professional consultant. I run a big mortgage operation, and I do home loans individually. And I'm like, well, my personal production is not very good, and I don't want to work more hours, so I'm just going to let it go. It's not true. I just had to change the way I thought about it and actually, in this case, it was relearn some skills,
Yeah.
which is kind of embarrassing, but that happens too.
Guys, of everything that we've covered so far, write that one down. That's a huge nugget. So whenever I'm frustrated, or whenever I'm working too much, or I'm not saving enough money, or whatever it is, put underneath it, I just need to learn more skills. And you're going to have to reach out to someone to help you that, or read a book, or go see a friend that's good in that area, and be vicious about it so that you can learn the skills. I love
Ask for help. Biggest thing you said right there, ask for help. Got to ask for lots of help. That's whenever I'm really, really messed up, it's because I'm not asking people for help.
Yep, me too. So the last question on here is, what's the biggest business's biggest weakness? When I look at this in my mortgage business, this year we really fell behind in hiring enough underwriters. So we recently have fixed that, but it was a real struggle this year. And there's massive volume, and rates bottomed out, and it was just a crazy time. But that definitely was a huge weakness. Jimmy, in your branches, what was the weakness this year that you experienced?
The biggest weakness we had was it comes down to hiring also, but our business fluctuates a lot more than some, not more than all for sure. But I was holding on to the fears of a downturn in the past, and it stopped me from doing what my gut and my intuition told me to do for a while. So I just didn't respond. I just didn't respond fast enough, even though I went to work every day and knew, Todd, I knew exactly what I should do. I knew it. I would let people around me choosing to listen to the wrong people and my own fears stop me from what I was doing, right? And so that was the biggest thing. It didn't last long, but yeah, it happens.
Yeah, I would tell you guys, Jimmy just hit it on another nugget. Fear of hiring for a lot of business owners is it's not the right direction. Now, every business is different, but if you can hire another employee that gives you 40 more hours of work and you're only working 40 or 50 now, you just doubled your output, right? So you get to do what you get to do that makes the business more money, and the administrative stuff or the other work can be taken over by someone else, and that just replicates itself over and over and over again. So
I always ask, hey, are you lazy? Like, Todd, are you lazy?
nope.
I mean, do you work when you're at work? Are you working?
I work like a mad dog 8 hours a day.
Yeah. So everybody I've ever asked says those two answers. And I'm like, so you're not lazy. You're working. Are you super inefficient? Like, do you kind of stink at your job?
Nope.
No. So you're not lazy. You're not inefficient. You work. You show up. It's a math equation, bro. If you want to get more done, you have to have more bodies. It's that simple. What everybody thinks and feels for a moment is, I could be more effective. My team members could be more efficient. Like, no, dude, they're coming to work. They're working hard. You got too much stuff going on. We need more help. It's always about asking for more help. So anyway, sorry to jump in.
What this section does is it asks you answer these questions. You can add more questions. You can delete a couple questions. And then what are you going to do next year? Okay, what is my income goal? What is my savings goal? How many employees will I hire? And then I ask you to do this 5 years from now. And the reason I do that is so we can think strategically on what that looks like 5 years from now. There's an exercise that I'd love all of you to do right now. This is a great one. I've actually got mine right here. So you take out a piece of paper. We usually use a business card and we say, hey, I'm going to put my dream income goal on here. Dream income goal. Like, I don't really think I'll ever achieve it. It's that big of a dream. So if someone's making 50,000 a year, they might write on there 500,000. And then you just put the date that you wrote it down. You put, I'm going to make 500,000 a year, and you put it in your little wallet, just like this. This is my last one I did. And I exceeded my income goal this year. That's written on this. I wrote this in 2015. I never thought I would achieve it ever. I've done that exercise 5 times. So if you think you can achieve it, you can, but you got to write it down. I don't pull this out and look at it. It's just in there. Okay. It's in my wallet, but it's somehow next to my body, and my body's absorbing that number. And it's like, I don't know, you could watch The Secret and read the book and all that, but it's like that stuff. I can't really explain it. I'm just telling you, thinking bigger works for sure. Okay. For sure. You can add other things to this, but this next section, there's 2 sections left. One is quarterly goals. So we've got all these things we want to do. What are we really going to get done?
Sorry about the irony.
That's okay. When we write down these quarterly goals, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do the first quarter, and who's going to do it? What's the timeline? So I might put, Jim to get this project done by March 15th, 2021, right? It's very specific, and it's got someone's name behind it. Now, if you're the only employee, then it's just you for now. When you hire an assistant, you can put someone else's name down there. If you're a bigger company, like maybe you've got 4 managers, those managers are held accountable to goals that support the company's goals. And one of the biggest mistakes I see in business planning is you write all these fancy business plans down and all these grandiose ideas. First problem is there's too many. You can't get everything done. And number 2, you don't disseminate the work. You don't disseminate the projects. No one's held accountable to helping, grow the business or improve the business. And that's something that I've been very good at. Most people are very, very, very bad at. I'll give you a statement and then I'll ask Jim for some input. One of my most famous sayings that is not very popular, but I use it, is someone will ask me something to do something and I'll say, I'll just look at them and say, if I wanted to do that, then I wouldn't have you. i.e., I'm not doing your job. So figure it out, right? So Jimmy, when it comes to breaking these year-long goals down into quarterly goals, how do you do it, and what do you find can mess that up?
Yeah, that my dad was, I don't know, just to dovetail on what you just said, my dad was a manager in IBM for 38 years, and he called what you're saying upward delegation.
Yep.
No upward delegation. You take stuff from me, you don't bring stuff back. No rubber band effect. And that's a leadership issue, right? That's the leader's fault, not the person's fault, right? The people are going to try and do that. People got to realize that when you're managing people, everybody you ever hire will unknowingly or maybe knowingly try to upward delegate, and you have to be strong enough to not take it. You want me to comment on how to break goals down into quarterly goals?
Yeah, when you think about it, like you've got all these year-long goals we want to achieve, how do you disseminate?
Yeah, so to talk about that a little bit, it has to do with like the biggest mistakes I've made in business planning. But the first step to that is creating buy-in with the team. And we can talk about that in a minute. So you have to create the buy-in, and then once we have the goals, in order to do them quarterly, we have to look at how's I do it? How much growth is that from right now? In other words, if it's a unit goal or a hiring goal, whatever it is, how much growth as a percentage is that from right now? And what's the soonest it would happen if it's all we focused on? So the truth is that it's going to happen somewhere between the soonest it could ever happen on and the end of the year. And by how big the percentage is, it helps me put it into what quarter. I know that sounds like a math equation, but that's literally what I do. Like, hey, what's the fastest we could hire 3 new loan officers? Mm-hmm. Well, hiring loan officers it's not something's going to happen in a month. And how much percentage growth is that from the number we have right now? And so then I maybe put them into the second and third quarters, one for each of the 3 quarters. And it helps me to put some logic to how we choose when they're going to get done. And then the biggest part of actually getting those done is to make sure they're assigned and delegated to somebody else. It's a tactical thing, but written, assigned and delegated to somebody else. And then lastly is to review it in a personal meeting with that person. You got to have personal meetings with anybody you delegate to on a scheduled regular basis and bring that up every time.
Yeah.
What I see most managers do, especially, you talked about in the beginning, Todd, most business owners are salespeople. Details and structure is not their strength. Personality and charm are their strength. And so this tactic of figuring out who to delegate to, and then secondly, meeting with that person either every 2 weeks or every month and reviewing what you delegated to them will make it happen. Just saying, oh, you got to get that done by June 1st, and then asking them June 1st if it got done, that does not work.
Yeah, very good. This last section is about us doing a SWOT analysis. So when you think about SWOTs, most people have done this, and this is the simplest way to start business planning. Hey, you get people in a room and you're like, hey, what are our strengths? What do we do really well? And what I do is write them all down on a whiteboard, and we'll come up with 10, and then we got to get it down to 3. And sometimes we argue and fight about what the biggest strength is and what makes the biggest difference to the business. Then we go to weaknesses. Hey, what's the biggest weaknesses? What are we really struggling with? And then we do opportunities, we do threats. One of the things that I wrote down, just to give you some examples, under strengths, we in the mortgage company, we're very purchase focused. We do most of the loans we do are people buying homes. Most mortgage companies are refinance driven, and they'll do good in an environment when rates are low, but then when rates go up, they go out of business. Weaknesses, a proper staffing. I mentioned that before. We've been behind on staffing. Well, what Jim said earlier, if you don't have enough bodies, you can't get the work done in time. Opportunities, we put higher level of employee empowerment. We think that we can push much more decision-making way down, further down into the process. Threats. One of the threats we put on here is the COVID economy, right? We didn't know what was going to happen. This has been updated. So I do, the way we do business planning as far as a process, we go, we spend 2 full days on it at the end of the year. And then every quarter we go off for a day or a half a day and update it. Okay, so there's a rhythm to it. Is every quarter you are looking at this business plan and you're updating that business plan. So the reason you do that is if you take this year, we business planned and we had this great business plan for 2020, and then March came and COVID came and it totally changed. When I say my business plan totally changed, it totally changed. We had an emergency planning meeting and like, oh, forget everything we put on paper. It's all changing. And so it's got to be, you know, a lot of businesses are like that. Some are more consistent, some are not. And certainly this year, it has been a crazy one. So Jim, your thoughts on SWOT analysis?
Yeah, the biggest thing you touched on that, I had actually written it down, getting ready to talk to you today, is the biggest speed bump or roadblock for people in business planning that I see when I'm coaching other people in our industry and talking to other business owners, small business owners especially. They start thinking that if they put a business plan down and they share it with a bunch of people, that they can't change it. And so it starts to feel to them like handcuffs, and they're like, oh, well, I respond well. That's their business plan. I respond well, or I react well. And it just has to be, you just got to know it's okay, man. Things change and it can change. It can change anytime you want. You could wake up after a week after doing it and decide we got to do it again because it ain't right. But if you put it down and you make it and you make those decisions, that will enable you to get to wherever it was you were going to get a lot faster. And that's really what business planning is about, is speed to implementation and just getting to wherever it is you're going faster with more help.
Yeah, I love it. Very simple. So when you think about this, guys, we're doing business planning. I'm doing my podcast that I'm doing this month for general people is personal goal setting. It's the same thing. When you write something down, it's hard not to work towards it. Even if you don't look at it again, it's in your head, it's in your subconscious, it's in your mind, it's in your heart, and you just start going towards it. As Jim just said, when you share it publicly with a bunch of people, people drive towards it, right? It's just what people do, and it's part of influence. But as long as you're influencing for the right reason to help grow a business or make it more profitable, provide more job security, provide better benefits, all these things, everyone's winning, right?
Yes.
And that's the idea. You know, Jim, let me summarize with this, or let me ask you this question as we get towards the end of this. If you were to pick a couple mistakes that people make in business planning, and we may have already covered them, but what are a couple mistakes you see people consistently make?
Really good question. I would say the simplest answer is they skip it. That's the simple one. I got a longer one that's important, and I need to say it. But the simple one is they skip it. They literally skip it. Or maybe they do it on a cocktail napkin at night one time on New Year's Eve or something. But they literally skip it, and they kind of run their business as a living in effect. That their business is influenced by the market or the state or the taxes, rather than taking a living in cause mentality that that it's up to me how it goes. So they skip it. But if I had to say, once you're doing them, just a couple ideas that I really wanted to share with you because they're mistakes I've made in the past. Number one is, all these bullet points I'm going to talk about are underneath this. They don't create buy-in. They don't create buy-in with their people. So I'm going to give you some steps on how to create buy-in really quickly. Your forms are the forms to use with a little bit of this sprinkled on top, right? So they don't create buy-in. If you have a business plan and you're leading a bunch of people and there's not buy-in, just think about what that sounds like. We're going over here and they're not bought in. And if they're not bought in, it's only for one of two reasons. So remember this, it's either because they don't see the benefit to them. They don't see any benefit to them. They think it's all for the benefit of you. That's one reason they won't buy in. Second one is they don't feel like they had a voice. So the mistakes I've made is those two mistakes, not making them feel like they had a voice and not letting them know the benefit to them. So that's a sales skill, believe it or not. It's a sales skill within a business plan. So some ideas around that, Todd, is look, I have 7 locations in 3 states. Once a year, I literally fly everybody, secretaries, receptionists, everybody in for my business plan. Now, some of them can't make it, and that's okay. But 85, 95%, everybody that works for me in one room for the whole day. And we go through the 2 forms that you talked about. The second big ingredient to remember that is everybody gets a voice. Everybody gets to talk a lot during that business planning, and everybody's got to feel heard. So I told you I'm a defender. They started telling me what our weaknesses are. I think they're attacking me. I start selling them on why they're not right. And here's why we do that. And you don't know what you're talking about. I have done that too, Todd. It's embarrassing. Yes, I've done that in front of my people. Yes, I don't do it anymore because I literally put a sign up above the door of the business planning that says, don't defend. So when I'm looking at them, looking at me, I can see don't defend on there. So I keep my mouth shut. And then you got to publish the plan. You got to publish it, hang it on the walls of your office, publish it in a pretty board, frame the sheet, and then share it all the time. You got to review it all the time. So those are the things I think are super important to any business plan, whether you use Todd's format, which has changed my life and influenced me a bunch. So thank you for that. It's just been a game changer in my growth. Or you use some other one, make sure you do those things.
I love it. I love it. Guys, a couple comments and then we got to close out. You know, as I'm developing this series, A, I want to be real. B, I want to give you tactical information. I love podcasts. I just think that they can be done a little more tactically. So hopefully you felt that today. And I want to bring on some great guests that sometimes aren't, you know, the Tony Robbins type people. There's someone like Jim who worked at a grocery store and has developed himself and his skills and his business to a point that's very admirable over many, many, many years, because that is more relatable to most of us, right? It's hard for me to identify with someone that's, you know, a billionaire, right? It's just hard to relate to those people. So I'm trying to bring on guests when I have them that are very relatable. And Jimmy, I think you've done a great job. You run a great business. I'm very proud of you. I couldn't be, you know, I get teary-eyed when I think of you on how great you've become over the years. And it's been consistent, steady growth. There's not been like some light bulb moment where all of a sudden, oh, that Jimmy's perfect, you know. But to see what you've done in your life, to see the kind of father you are, it's so admirable, I can't tell you. And my hope is that people listen to this and they say, I want to be more like him, because they should, because you're a great example of how to run a business and also have a great personal life.
Wow, thank you. I feel super honored to be on your first podcast. I'm super excited about sharing the stuff we've learned with people. I mean, that's one of the things that I was told. One of my mentors said, hey, I'm going to teach you a bunch of stuff, but you got to teach other people. So I'm super honored to be part of that.
Thank you, guys. A couple of things. You can get the visuals by going to beyourbestseries.com. I got a couple asks for you. Number one, I want you to share this with someone that you know, 3 people that you know, and just, I don't know if you're listening to this on YouTube, text it to 3 people and just say, hey, I want you to tell them what you got from it, and I want you to share the information, okay? My goal, just so you know, is to have 1 million people have watched these webinar series by the end of 2021. So that's a big, big goal. Jimmy said I'm a big thinker. I want to blow this up. I want to help business people become better. Secondly, is I have a challenge for you. Right now, as you're listening, I want you to text someone and say, you will have a draft of my business plan by, pick a date, January 30th, or I will pay you $250. Like, actually just text an accountability partner and say, hey, I'm going to get a draft of my business plan done by January 30th or pick some date close to that, or I'm going to pay you $250 as a fine. Accountability is a big key in our lives, guys. And I know that a lot of people have asked me, well, gosh, how did you get so far along in business and do all this stuff? The best thing I can tell you is I had accountability coaches. I've now had accountability coaches for 23 years. And that's the longest of anyone I know. So it's a lot, but it works, guys. So Jimmy, thank you once again. First Be Your Best Pod series is in the books. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with a few friends. Thanks again, Jimmy.
Thank you, buddy. Nice job.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.
I just want to invest in people that really want to be the best that they can be.